Welcome to the Unofficial Steelers Podcast, the podcast so unofficial it doesn't have a home. Here's your host from In Hindsight, Nathan Heinz. And from State of the Steelers, Daniel J. Here we go.
What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of State of the Steelers. I'm your Steel Curtain Network host, Daniel, and alongside with me today, we have a guest host, my good buddy Nathan Heinz from In Hindsight. He's also a good buddy of mine that's a co-host of the Unofficial Steelers podcast, which airs out live on YouTube, and which will probably be airing out a little bit more often now that the season has started. But welcome to the show, Nathan. How are you doing, my man?
Not too bad, Daniel. Good to be back on the show. It's been a little while, probably about a good month since you and I have done a show. It's been it's the dry time, man. That's the dry time. It's hard to kind of really create content when there's really not much going on. So good to be back. Exciting that we're close to August here. But thanks for having me on.
No problem. Thank you for joining, thank you for joining, and thank you everyone for tuning in. So day one of training camp is in the books, and it started off with a little bit of news. You know, Russell Wilson was on the field, but he wasn't taking snaps with the first team offense. Apparently he had some sort of calf issue. Justin Fields, he takes on, the first team reps, and by all accounts and everything that I've seen, looks like he impressed out there. What are your thoughts first and foremost on the injury to Russell Wilson? First day of training camp. What is that? How do you feel about all this?
That doesn't really mean too much to me. Has a little bit of a calf issue there to kind of start. He's got the rest of this week, all of August, man. It's really not too much, but it's a good thing for Justin Fields. So I'm sure Wilson probably be out there sometime this week or early next week, ready to go. There's no reason to kind of push him here in the end of July to be out there and get some work in right now. But with him not being there, it opens up a good door for Justin Fields to kind of get some first team action there, kind of show a little bit what he can do. So a lot of times that's where it all starts, is when there's a window of opportunity. And Fields has to, whenever there's a window of opportunity, especially that it seems like Wilson's in the front running spot, which is understandable. He's got to take advantage of it. So, and he got that opportunity today.
Yes, he did. The question now becomes, how long is Russ going to be out? You're going to be precautionary. I mean, you're right. This is the first day of training camp. He's a guy that's been in the league a few years. This isn't his first training camp. He's a veteran. So although this is a new offense and a new team to him, you should expect a level of professionalism when it comes to his game and readiness, so to speak. I mean, it's not like he didn't have the playbook, or he hasn't had the opportunity to work with the receivers, with the guys throughout the entire offseason. So I'm not too concerned about that aspect. The one thing that does concern me is, well, how long is he going to be out? And if he ends up being, out a week or so, if Justin Fields continues to get better and improves on what he's doing now, there's already a lot of these analysts that are talking Justin Fields is going to be the starting quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers at some point this season. Do you think that potentially could even happen before the first preseason game if he continues to go in this direction?
Well, there's only one day, so I'm going to hold off on that in terms of before the season. It's possible for sure that there's a point in the season where he does take over. That's definitely possible due to injury, due to poor play. So that's definitely reasonable. And that's something that we're have to wait and see. But I think the chances are super, super slim that happens before the season, because you have the whole month of August, and Russell Wilson, this isn't going to be something that holds him out like multiple weeks or anything like that. This is
And Nathan's having a little bit of technical difficulties there. I agree with you, Nathan. And, for the most part there, when
Yeah.
the talking
Okay.
heads, the
I think we're okay.
analysis that are out there. Yeah, you had paused there for a minute there.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
when everything kind of, even though all these talking heads and all these guys that are talking about Justin Fields starting and potentially even before the season starts, I do agree with you. I think that this is going to be Russ's job to lose. Now,
100%.
if Justin goes out there and impresses and continues to impress, and like you're right, this is just day one. They haven't
Mhm.
even put on pads yet. So,
Right.
but if he continues to impress, and if this calf thing ends up becoming an issue and it starts to affect Russell Wilson's mechanics or his throwing motion or his accuracy, I think that you know there may be a question sooner than later if he begins to struggle. So, for us, it's going to be like a double-edged sword. Does he want to come back soon? Take over as the leader there, make sure that he's holding it off, but maybe perhaps risk further injury to the calf and or maybe not the best play, or sit on the sideline a little bit longer than you may want to and allow Justin Fields to show what he can do. It's a tricky situation for Russ, and it's one that I'll be excited to continue to follow this entire training camp. Uh, I think he ends up. I think he's back. Probably tomorrow. I say he practices tomorrow.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah. Yeah. It's something that was kind of happened early in the morning today. He wanted to play. He wanted to get out there, just do some work, and they're like, dude, it's day one. We're not gonna. It's July 25th. We're not gonna. It's not September. It's not September 1st, right? So there's gonna be plenty of time to get his feet wet. There's gonna be plenty of time. He seems to be in good shape, just physically. So there's gonna be plenty of time for him to get himself going. But in the meantime, it's a good opportunity for Justin Fields just to put himself out there, get himself a little acclimated to what's going on. Um, but yeah, during it's this preseason will be pretty fun in terms of watching them both and kind of the story going on. I still think there's a little bit of a non-story, but a story all at the same time. Um, it's gonna be fun to watch. A lot of times preseason games, we just kind of look at like some of the new guys, some of the rookies coming up, but the fact that you have really just a new quarterback room and a couple guys. One's been there, done that. The other one is a guy that has upside and everything. It'll be exciting. So just gonna have to uh, see what Justin Fields does from here on out, honestly, and probably will get a lot of second team reps, unfortunately. But that's just the situation he's in. Honestly, I think it's good for him.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that's the most exciting about Justin Fields is the possibility of a long-term future.
Hmm.
You don't get that with Russell Wilson. He's already
Right,
35 years old. You're
right.
probably looking at, maybe two more seasons after this one, of high quality play. If we can get
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
there's been a little bit of a downward slope. Maybe not so much last year, but in his last few years in Seattle, and then his first year in Denver, I'd say last year may have been an increase in performance a little bit.
Hmm.
It still wasn't what he was in his prime. So,
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
no, of course not.
we're probably not going to get that. We're not going to get early
Right.
Seattle Russell Wilson.
No, no, we're not, and it's okay. I think everybody will probably take what Russell Wilson did last year, this year, with everything that the Steelers quarterback play has had the last 4 years.
I agree.
I
I
think,
agree
yeah,
100%.
best case scenario, maybe not fully best case scenario, but I think really anybody will take a win if Russell Wilson's even just middle of the pack quarterbacks, middle of the pack, 15, 16, right? I think anybody will take
Mhm.
that if he can find
Yeah.
himself in that type of spot. Um, the Steelers have a roster that we know is defensive minded still, and that's okay. We know that we probably would all like to see them get maybe one more offensive guy, offensive playmaker for the season. It's still up there, but all things considered, a little bit of a new line in a way, just younger, tooled more, new offensive coordinator. Yeah, there's things to like. But with Russell Wilson, I honestly, dude, I think for him to get a big contract, there's gonna have to be a lot of boxes checked for him to do this year. I think for him to get a big contract extension, a lot of boxes have to be checked. And this is a big thank you, Afton. Sorry, Daniel, edit that out. But in terms of for Wilson, there's going to have to be for him to be here longer term at 35, not really being where he used to be. There's going to have to be a lot of kind of turnaround for him. And it's kind of hard to fully get behind all of that, given his age, given kind of we've seen the decrease in Seattle. We've seen the decrease in Denver. A little bit better last year. Best case scenario is that Wilson can keep them in games and win them games, and they're more of a middle pack offense with one of the better defenses, and then Justin Fields just develops off the field, and he ends up being their future guy. A lot of times quarterbacks need to sit behind guys. And with Justin Fields, he went to Chicago trying to be the savior of the franchise, a quarterback they've never had. There was a lot of things that went wrong and a lot of things that he didn't have a lot of help with. He has a lot of his own messy problems that he needs to clean up himself. But being able to sit behind a polished, seasoned veteran guy, a Super Bowl champion, and definitely a better organization, definitely a better coaching staff, things like that, those things matter. And Justin Fields being as young as he is, who has still played 3 seasons in the NFL, it's a good way for him to reset, to restart himself. And I do value the fact of young quarterbacks sitting for a bit because it's completely different. And even though he started right away in his career in Chicago, it was messy, but him being able to come here to more stability and everything, not saying, Mike Tomlin's this great quarterback developer or anything, but still, there's more stability. There's more to work with. He's not coming in here with all the weight on his shoulders that the Steelers, Kenny Pickett failed and they haven't been able to figure out a quarterback since Big Ben. It's going to be Justin Fields. He's not going to have that on his shoulders right away. And I think that that's going to help. Rather, it's going to be on a guy like Russell Wilson's shoulders a little bit, who's already been there, done that. So it's really nothing new to him in terms of trying to be a guy to come in, not save the franchise, but to come in and have more weight on his shoulders to be better than what they've had. I think it's more suited for Russell Wilson to come in and do that right away rather than Justin Fields. Give Justin Fields a little bit of time.
I agree. I think that it would probably be in his best interest to, for Justin Fields to sit for a little bit, unless he's just showing up, man. I think there's a certain point.
Yeah, for sure.
I think there's at a certain place and point where if he's showing up, even if it's in practice or whatever, and Russ is struggling, I mean, you got to do what's best for the team.
100%.
So
100%.
I hope they'll do that. I know that there may have been some sort of like under the hand, deal with Russell Wilson as far as him starting and the percentage of games he would start or whatever the case may have been. But, if he ends up balling out and continuing to show up, this team has a lot of weapons around him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. This team has a lot of weapons. I mean, what they were able to do the last part of the season with Mason Rudolph, and no disrespect to Mason Rudolph, but I would expect a better performance from either one of these quarterbacks with the same team. And I think that this team here offensively is possibly even better than they were last year. The only question mark is going to be is, Deontay Johnson versus whoever's going to be the receiver opposite side of George Pickens, which was kind of transition. Speaking of George Pickens, he got into a heated exchange today with wide receiver coach Zach. Was it as let me see, I wrote it down somewhere. I have to read his name or else I won't be able to pronounce it correctly. Azani. So apparently George didn't like the criticism that he gave, so they got into it back and forth. Azani's been known to be a hard-nosed coach who's going to get in the wide receiver's face. He don't care about what your salary is, what your position is, or any of those things, or where you think you lie in the depth chart. He's going to get in your face if you're doing something wrong. And day one, there's already a heated exchange. Last season, there was a few, not so much rumors, but stories that came out of George Pickens either arguing with a coach on the sideline, visually showing his frustrations on the field and off the field, There was even times where, like in one of the Cincinnati games, where he just didn't look like he was in it anymore. And so my question is, like, is he going to be on this? Is he somebody that we should be concerned about maybe not perhaps being on the team much longer? Seems like the Steelers have done their due diligence to kind of get rid of some of the guys who maybe have had an attitude problem that were, acquired under the Kevin Colbert era. George Pickens is kind of following in suit. You think? What do you think? Where do you think the line falls with George Pickens on this?
Well, this is why I think the Steelers wouldn't be afraid to pay a top wide receiver if they would acquire one. This is why I don't think they would. I don't think the Brandon Ayuk stuff is a problem of his contract and giving him an extension. I think it's just more so what San Francisco wants for him and their stubbornness. When it comes to George Pickens, to me, it seems like that he thinks he's already at a spot or like, okay, he wants to be the best out there. Who doesn't, right? If you're a pro athlete, who doesn't? But it seems like Pickens probably thinks that he's already at that spot where he's kind of already, I don't know, earned certain things or earned to be treated a certain way. Like where he wants to be in his mind, I feel like he thinks that he's already there and he's not. You know what I mean? And he needs to work. Like, dude, you're 23 years old. Have some humility in your life. Like, honestly, have some humility in your life. You're a pro athlete. Okay, you're getting criticism off a lazy release or whatever it was. Okay, you're gonna get criticism with your game. That's how you develop. That's how you do it. The previous Steelers wide receiver coach, whatever the heck his name was, wasn't getting the job done. The Steelers wide receivers, even though there's talent there, it's been putrid the last 3 years. We can put a lot of that on quarterback and who was playing quarterback during those years. But at the same time, the development hasn't been there. Chase Claypool, Deontay Johnson, right? Guys with talent, development's not there. Okay. George Pickens, talent's there, had a pretty good year last year, all things considered. I think he has the ability to be a top wide receiver in the league. But when you already think that you're at the place where you're trying to strive to, and you think you're already there and you're above criticism, you're above coaches doing this, and that, well, then you're stunning your own growth. And this is probably why you're not going to reach the levels that you probably think that you're already at or that you're trying to reach, if that's going to continually be the case. Unless you're Antonio Brown, who's a freak of nature. That's a completely different story. He's not Antonio Brown. Nobody is. So
correct.
With George Pickens, man, it's definitely something everybody's going to keep an eye on, just in terms of, we know how he acted last year. We know the immaturity. We know the frustrations with the quarterback. And when you are, okay, a year later, you're a year older, you have a new quarterback room, depending how that falls out. But is he going to take a step forward in maturity and in leadership in a wide receiver room that doesn't have much of that? Or are we going to see another year of Pickens of what we saw last year? Honestly, a headache a lot of times. And right now, it seems like we're probably going to see some of what we saw last year, some quitting, some frustration, right? But it seems like just these guys that came from nothing, right? Once they have everything, it's all things go, right? Can do whatever I want to do. I have my own way. I'm making all this money, right? I'm the best wide receiver on the team. Okay. There's so many times guys get caught up in their own mind and they can't see it because they surround themselves with a bunch of yes men. That's probably what George Pickens has around himself. Probably a bunch of yes men. When you have a guy like their wide receiver coach who got in on him, he gets pissed off. Okay. So right there, that just goes to show, okay, the way that he thinks that he does things, he does no wrong. He's where he needs to be as a wide receiver, when that's not the case whatsoever. And so that's what it bleeds off to me. That's what it comes off to me, that he thinks he's already where he needs to be at 23 years old, and he's not. He's not.
Yeah,
and
no,
that's the way it bleeds off to me. That's how it bleeds off to me in that aspect.
Right. And like I said, he had some issues last season. He's already starting this season, on the bad foot. There's been some question marks about Brandon Ayuk. And I don't think he participated in training camp today. I think he was there at 49ers training camp, but I don't think he participated. I think the picture that I saw while everybody was in gear and stuff was him in like some street clothes. So I assume that he didn't participate. Um, would the Steelers consider maybe a package Pickens for Ayuk? I mean, they would end up getting a guy that they have under contract this year who isn't going to be. It's not a lot of money. Maybe next season as well. I mean, he's what's next year? Well, this would be a year that he'd be going into next where he's going to want a deal. Maybe some things could be worked out then, but I really wouldn't want to do that. I'd rather have them both. But man, this guy
I don't
really
think
needs to.
Yeah, to get I don't think they would need to give up George Pickens, honestly. San Francisco has enough wide receivers as it is. They drafted one in the first round, they drafted one in the third round. They still have Deebo Samuel there, and they extended Jawan Jennings. They don't need George Pickens, and you have Christian McCaffrey. They don't need George Pickens. I doubt they're even interested in the guy. I think with them, it's like they want to run it back and give it another shot with this team. But the fact that they're being reluctant to give Brandon Ayuk what he wants, their hand's gonna have to be played at some point. And I think that there's definitely a level of stubbornness because they don't want to give him up. They want to run it back. So there's a level of stubbornness, but teams interested, whether that's Washington or the Steelers or the Patriots or whoever, it's really kind of a waiting game. They're not going to budge, right? They're not going to budge. They're not going to oversell. So I definitely think if the Steelers would acquire him, they would definitely be ready to give him a contract extension, 100%. The Steelers have the money to do it.
Yeah.
They have a lot of money that's going to be freed up next year. So they got the money to do it. But I think San Francisco just wants to run it back and are just hanging on to a thread as tight as they can until they can't anymore.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, they don't. It's not. He's still under contract, Brandon Ayuk over there, so he's going to have to play at the end of the day. If he doesn't play in training camp, he's already been in the system for a few years. This is what his fifth year. I think this is, or is this his fifth year option, or is it just his fourth? I don't remember. Either way, this is his last year with the 49ers under contract, and they have him under contract. I mean, he might miss out on training camp and things of that nature, preseason. He's probably not going to play a lot of preseason anyways.
He's going to play this year. If the Niners don't trade him, he's going to play. He's going to play because he's going to be a free agent next year, and he wants a big contract. The worst thing you can do is sit out. How many times we've seen that? That's the worst thing you can do.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. Well, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after a few words from our sponsors. Don't go anywhere, guys. And welcome back. Welcome back to the State of the Steelers. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is special guest Nathan Hines from In Hindsight and my co-host on the Unofficial Steelers podcast. Before we get back in the conversation, I want to remind you guys of the SteelCurtainNetwork.com website, where you can find, all your up-to-date news on the Pittsburgh Steelers, articles every day, breaking news all the time. And while you're there, you can check out the audio podcasts that come out where you're hearing this one at. But for those that are listening to this elsewhere, wherever you go and find your podcast, you can listen to that. Those Steel Curtain Network episodes, including mine, which airs out on Friday at noon. And so, and also don't forget, Mondays, I am on SteelCurtainNetwork.com's YouTube channel with Shannon White on a show called The Steelers Hangover. You don't want to miss it. Make sure you guys go like, subscribe, follow, do everything you need to do to make sure you're grabbing all that content. So let's get back into the conversation. And I'm kind of moving away from George Pickens and Brandon Ayuk and the wide receiver group. I mean, there's going to be a lot of, everything's just, speculating at this point on what they can or won't do. I think George Pickens isn't really making, any, he's not showing any, what's the word I'm looking for? He's not doing himself any favors by acting in this manner. And, especially if he wants to end up being a highly paid wide receiver and still wants to be a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But transitioning to the last group on the offense that I wanted to talk about today, which was the offensive line. Dan Moore started at left tackle, and Herbig was your center on the first teams, and Broderick Jones was on the right tackle. I understand why the Pittsburgh Steelers are doing this. They want these guys to earn it, and maybe perhaps they're not ready right now to be the number one guy. But to me, I think that if your goal is to have these guys ready to be the number ones come week one, we got to start treating them that way. I understand that maybe perhaps, the offensive line isn't going to look as good as it, right now would look better if Dan Moore and Broderick Jones were in there and Herbig was in there. But that level of, or that bar, you're expecting these other guys to surpass eventually. Right. And I'm just thinking, like, right now, what's it hurt? You're not, there's not like there's a game this weekend that you can lose if you play some players that aren't as, ready to go. None of these games that are going to happen in the next month are going to count. So let's get these guys ready. What are your thoughts about the offensive line and how the Pittsburgh Steelers are implementing, the rookies into the offensive line?
Well, I'm not surprised on what they did today. This is typical Steelers MO on what they do with these rookies and everything, and making them earn it, quote unquote, and all that stuff. We all know that the best looking line on paper is Jones and Troy and Frazier and Samalu and Daniels. We all know that's the best looking line on paper, and that's what it will be at some point this season, hopefully to start the year. But I'm not surprised. Dan Moore, Herbig, those are the two guys that have years under their plate. This is what they do. I don't know if Frazier and Troy are both going to be ready to go week one. I don't know. I don't know. That's the thing about it is, even though that those are two future pieces that they hope prosper into being long-term pieces to their offensive line, what if one of them is just not quite there, right? What if one of them's just not quite there? Maybe they need 4 weeks. Come week 5, they're ready to go, right? So what do? Dan Moore or Nate Herbig at center? I mean, that's your only other option, right? I don't like, who else is the other center option? If it's not going to
Spencer
be
Anderson.
Frazier, Spencer Anderson. Okay, so
Yeah,
Spencer
you got
Anderson.
Herbig, and I think McCormick played a little bit of center, or was projected to be a possible center as well.
Okay. So right now, Herbig is listed as that. We all hope that what I said before in terms of the best looking line on paper is what it ends up being. And I'm with you too. I would like to see them maybe start to change their tune a little bit in these type of things, depending on, now they see it better than we do, but we saw the problems with Joey Porter last year, right? Joey Porter wasn't getting the full snaps until half the season, right? It was like he's blowing all these guys out of the water in terms of being the best corner on the roster, but he's not really being treated as such. I understand he's a rookie and everything like that, but it gets to a point like you got to reward these guys. These guys that you drafted in the first, second round, you got to start treating them like that. And kind of to your point with what you said, yeah, I would like to see the Steelers maybe trot those guys out of the first team. Like, hey, we took you guys in the first or second round. This is your guys' time now, right? We're going to give you the opportunity to work with the ones. We're going to put you out there to start working with the ones, not substitute you in throughout the day. We're going to put you out there. Doesn't mean you have to do it every single day, but I think a lot of us would probably like to see them go a little bit of a different approach with some of the rookies and the way they handle these rookies, because it's, when you look at other teams across the league, they do things differently, and every team does things differently. But I see so many more teams than the Steelers that project their rookies right in there, ready to go, right out the gate. And I think more times than not, it bites the Steelers because they don't want to play the rookies right away. We saw that with Martavis Bryant. We saw that with Joey Porter. We've seen that with like even TJ Watt his rookie year, right? He wasn't the full-time starter. He had James Harrison there still. So we've seen that with who's the other guy? I just lost. Najee started. I mean, even like Kenny. Like Kenny wasn't very good, but I think most of us wanted Kenny to start over Mitch. And I think it would have made I think it would have made most sense. Yeah. And so then you have a guy like Kendrick Green starting. Okay, that doesn't make much sense. He didn't work out. But you look at guys in the past that ended up having really good rookie years, but weren't even starters, at least not till half the season. They're guys in the first few rounds, and that's just the way that they've always operated. And I think sometimes you need to change your ship in a way of like, I think it's mind baffling for a lot of people. Like, okay, if this is your best guy and he's a rookie, don't just be treating him like a rookie. He needs to be out there. He's earned it. He's working his ass off. He's shown these other guys up. Oh, but we're gonna play Levi Wallace still. Oh, we're gonna play Patrick Peterson still. How'd that work out for you?
I think when it comes to them not starting the offensive line or the rookies, I get it. They want to ease them in, as we said. But the one thing that frustrates me the most is that Beanie Bishop, undrafted free agent slot corner, got reps with the ones.
Right.
The undrafted rookie is getting reps with the ones, and they're arguably in the same situation. If you look at Frazier, Herbig wasn't a starting center anywhere. He was never a starting center. What has he done to earn the starting position?
Right. So why does he earn it? Just because he's been in the league for 4 years?
Right. Exactly.
He's not a center. He's a freaking guard.
Yeah, he wasn't a starter. I don't think he's been a starter. I think he's played as a starter here and there
for the Eagles, but that's about it.
Right. So when you look at Beanie Bishop going in there, why aren't you starting the other guys ahead of him, the guys that have been there longer?
Right.
And that's the frustrating part for me when I look at this. I don't think to myself,
why aren't you putting that one guy? Why is not Anthony Everett in there then? If that's the way that we want to go, Anthony Everett's been in the league for a long time with the Ravens. Why isn't he in there then? Why is it Beanie Bishop? Right? Why is it why that what's his face? That guy from the Texans or whatever, wherever the heck they got him from this year. Graylin or something like that. I forget his name, but he's been in the league for a couple years. He played games for the Texans, so why isn't it him?
Right, exactly.
Why is it Beanie Bishop, who hasn't shown you a lick of anything?
Exactly. And so to me, that's the frustrating part about this. And Beanie Bishop starting, maybe perhaps he's shown something that the other guys haven't. And maybe perhaps when it comes to the offensive line, there's less that you can show without pads. So I understand that. But at the same token, the pads are going to count there too in the slot corner position. He's going to have to make tackles.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so you're not going to be able to know whether or not a guy of his stature, he's a smaller guy, is he going to be able to handle some of these bigger hits of the NFL players? And so I don't know. That's the frustrating part for me.
I get what you're saying. And I know that they see these guys, that they're with these guys every day. I understand it. But when you have a first, second round pick that's not getting the first team snaps over Dan Moore, who is horrific. I don't care what anybody says. He's not good. He's not good. Is he a decent backup? Sure. But he's not starting material. I'm sorry. Nate Herbig, he's not even a center. I don't care what anybody says. Oh, Nate Herbig can play center. He's not a center. He's not a center. So why does he get the nod?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing about it. Yeah, no, I agree. It definitely makes you question, especially even guys undrafted, and they're already getting the spot.
Yeah. It's and I'm not wishing anything bad for Beanie Bishop. I hope he ends up being the next Mike Hilton, if not better.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? But what I'm thinking is, and where my concern is especially with the offensive line, it's such a group that requires some gelling. It requires the chemistry, the camaraderie, and I'm not sure you're going to get that if you have them mixed up and you don't even have them playing in the position that you ultimately want them to play. For instance,
you're swapping Broderick Jones to the left and the right side.
Exactly. And so, I'd rather get Broderick Jones ready to be the left tackle because that's what he was drafted to be.
100%.
I mean, Omar Khan doesn't draft two tackles in the first rounds, the first two rounds. The first two first rounds. There you go. It's a tongue twister. Of his first two drafts, you don't do that. You don't go get tackles, and in fact, move up to 14 with a rival to get one without intentions of having those guys be your guys.
I agree.
Now, I understand if they were some sort of bust or if they weren't, playing to their potential or whatnot, but we don't know that out of Fatuanu. And when it comes to Broderick Jones, we've seen him play on the left side. When Dan Moore went down last year, he went in for a few games, and you know what? I think he played better on the left side than he did on the right.
I agree. A lot of people wanted them just to stick with him at left, and they didn't.
Maybe. And, a great point that's being brought up is that maybe perhaps they don't want to start Frazier and Fatuanu together at the same time, putting more pressure on James Daniels. I mean, maybe, but right now, I don't know about that.
What good does Nate Herbig do?
That's true.
So, like, if you're going to point the question, which is fair, that, okay, you have 2 rookies, you don't want to put the pressure on Daniels. Okay, it's a fair question. But what does Nate Herbig offer? What does Nate
That's
Herbig
true.
offer at center that's not going to put pressure on James Daniels?
And not only that, but if your goal is to have Fatuanu next to him, how is the pressure going to be when he eventually does take that position? Now he has to learn another player. Learn
You're
to
right.
be next to Fatuanu and not so
Right.
much next to Broderick Jones. And so
Right.
that to me is why I think I get the reasoning behind why, it's the traditional type of thing, you make your rookies work for it or whatever the case may be. I just, this is one of the things where, like many people didn't agree with Matt Canada and people thought that the Steelers should have gotten with the times and fired him a lot sooner than they did. And maybe perhaps Steelers may have done something more if they had done that. This might be another situation where, maybe
Yeah.
tradition in this situation.
Yeah, I'm really
Especially
tired of hearing tradition, dude. I'm really tired of hearing it. Yeah, this isn't 1980 anymore. This is
right, but
2024. You know,
I
I'm
will
tired of
say
hearing
though
tradition. I
that
respect it. I respect stability and everything like that. I really do. But there's times where you have to put things ahead of your tradition and the way that you do things. And I
I think
just really
certain
leaving it
things.
at that. Like I'm just tired of that word. I really am. I'm tired of that word.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, there are certain things that, and I don't think that those things that are maybe not so much tradition, more so stubbornness of
Yeah.
wanting to change certain ways,
Yeah.
right? Like not firing a coordinator and letting them finish out their contracts. I mean, how much better would we have been
Yeah.
without Randy Fietner and Matt
Right.
Canada the last
Like,
few
what good does
years?
that do? What good does that do finishing out their contract? It doesn't do
Exactly.
it
So
doesn't do anybody any good.
right, and so I there's some negatives and there's some pros and cons. The fact that they're out there in Latrobe, that's a piece of tradition that I actually like. I think it brings in that camaraderie, that brings in,
Mhm.
the togetherness, that that chemistry. It bonds these individuals together. So there are some things that yes, keep that there. The Steelers didn't get as successful as they are more so late in earlier years, not so much in the here recently, without some of those traditions. So I do respect those, but like I said, there are a few that come on now, we got to get with the times.
No, yeah.
But
100%.
speaking of rookies, though, a lot of talk, especially on the defensive side, of rookie Peyton Wilson.
Mhm.
I've seen a couple videos of him out there in training camp.
Mhm.
Word that comes to mind for everybody when I see them talking about Peyton Wilson is his burst. This guy
Mhm.
can move. This guy
Mhm.
can get from 0 to 5 yards in a blink of an eye. And so I'm really excited about this guy. I hope he's another guy that ends up being, in the lineup. I like Landon Roberts. I think he has a place on this defense, especially when we're going up against some of these, teams that want to run the ball more than not. But I'm really hopeful for Peyton Wilson. Now, I think that position, middle linebacker, I'm okay if he's eased in a little bit slower than the offensive line, just because the inside linebacker position, even though he's not the green dot guy, middle linebackers are the quote unquote quarterbacks of the defense, and they
Mhm.
need to know not just their position, but where a lot of the other guys are going to be at, and they got to be able to be communicative with that. Not saying that the offensive line doesn't, but there's 5 of those guys that can communicate back and forth. There's only 2 inside linebackers, sometimes 1. So uh, I'm looking forward to him maybe perhaps getting into the lineup and being a starter, but I'm a little bit all right with easing him in unless he's just blowing it up. But I'm
Right.
excited about him.
Yeah.
He looked good. I don't know if you've seen any of the videos out there, but man, that guy can move. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on Peyton
Yeah.
Wilson and his
Yeah.
play today?
Um, it's exciting to see some speed like that at the linebacker position. Steelers haven't had that. Holcomb doesn't really offer you that speed. Um, Devin Bush didn't really give you that type of speed. So a lot of their linebackers they've had, some of them thumpers, right? Some of them, most of them Can't drop back in coverage or anything like that. But the speed factor of the linebacker spot I think it goes a long way, not just like, okay, you can play your sideline to sideline and tackle and everything like that. Getting the quarterback like that is a linebacker, man. And Patrick Queen was good at that in Baltimore with Roquan Smith there, getting to the quarterback, getting sacks on the quarterback like that. They're probably going to utilize him a little bit, but when you can have speed like Peyton Wilson has showcased today, because even though that you drafted him, most Steeler fans probably aren't really too familiar with his game or anything. So being able to see certain things in practice and on the field and everything like that, and you can kind of see that burst like that quick, it definitely gives a level of excitement because the Steelers haven't really had that type of speed at that spot for quite a while. So we know the things in terms of some of the things that have kept him off the field a little bit, some of the things with the knee. But if he's somebody that can kind of be eased in, relieve Roberts at certain points throughout different points of the game, and if those can kind of be your three guys, I think it's kind of it's a little promising there. But speed of limb at the inside linebacker spot's a very big luxury. And I'll be honest, there's really not a lot of fast inside linebackers in the league. There's not.
Yeah, and I think it's even more important with the Pittsburgh Steelers because the Steelers implement, a defense where their inside linebackers are often covering wide receivers. It's been a kryptonite for this defense going back decades. Whether it's been Robert Spillane or God knows who else back there on I love TJ Watt, but I don't like seeing him on a receiver.
Not at all. Not at all.
I've seen it happen though. I've seen it where he's in coverage on a receiver, and I'm a little uncomfortable in those situations. So if we're gonna have a linebacker on a receiver, I am way more comfortable with the inside linebackers the Pittsburgh Steelers have with with Wilson and Patrick Queen.
Right.
The last thing that I wanted to bring up and talk about today is the defensive line. So the first team defensive line has been set out. It is Cam Hayward who showed up. He was there. He participated in practice. He showed why he's a leader.
Good for him. He's actually doing his job.
Exactly. He's doing his job, but at the end of the day as well, I mean, he could be doing a hold in and doing some of these other things. And, even at his age, he could maybe, even if he had a contract, maybe not even participate in these type of things just because he doesn't, he's up there in age. So the fact that he's out there and doing what he's doing and being there in this position, I mean, that sounds great to me. I love it. And he was out there. He was with the ones. It was him, Keanu Benton, and Larry Ogunjobi. It seems like those are going to be the three guys. That's going to be the starting three interior defensive line. I think that if these guys can stay healthy, that's going to be a mean front. I mean, once you add, TJ to that and also Alex Highsmith on the outside, if Larry Ogunjobi can stay healthy, I think this is the healthiest he's been in training camp in a while. Mm-hmm. This could be a very good season for this defense. I'm expecting this defense to be top 5.
It needs to be. It really needs to be. The last 2 years, they've been so disappointing. And it's not all on them, but they've been very disappointing the last 2 years. And with the amount of money that they invest into their defense year in, year out, as we've seen the last 5 years, they were the best defense in the league in 2019. They were top 3 in 2020. From 21 to 23, that 3-year time frame, they've led the league in sacks. Like, they can still sack the quarterback. They can still get some turnovers. But we know how many 2021 was awful in terms of they get slaughtered every week by a running back that year. Last year, pass coverage was horrific. They had injuries too at linebacker. I understand. I'm not saying it's all their fault, but they need to have their defense needs to have a season that they haven't had in the last 2-3 years. And again, you're paying guys high-end money. You invest, as you invested in your draft last year, defensive heavy. You bring in Elliott, you bring in Queen, which is your big signing. Dante Jackson you have. This needs to be something of, and they have decent depth there, but it needs to be a top 5 defense, 100%, 100%. Last year was, like I said, not all on them, but the last 2 years specifically, I expected those defense. I said the same thing as you did. This is gonna be a top 5 defense, and it didn't even crack the top 20.
I think that the offense had something to do with that, though.
Well, it did.
I mean,
That's
the
what I say. It's
fact
not
that
all on them, but
right,
they struggled to make plays, though. They really did.
yeah, and I agree. I mean, they could have possibly played better these last couple of years, but I think the offense's struggles to get a first down. I mean, there were games
Oh,
where
100%. Yeah, 100%.
I think that the defense was on the field for like 90 snaps or something like that. It was
Awful.
insane.
Yeah, it's awful.
And so I anticipate that this offense is going to be better, and I anticipate this team's going to be better defensively. Last year, the Steelers were snake bitten at almost every position. I mean, outside linebacker, Cam went down. All of the middle linebackers went down. How many of our safeties went down? Minka went down for a while. His backups went down. It's just the
you have
cornerbacks.
Trent Thompson back there and Eric Rowe.
Yeah, and Trent Thompson went down too with a neck or something like that. So
everybody was down, man. Everybody was down.
Yeah, and I put full responsibility on that on the offense. And that's just because they couldn't do anything, especially in the early on in the season. And it got to the point where so many of the players that they depended on were no longer available. And then the defense became a shadow of what it was to start the year. And so this year, I fully anticipate that if the Steelers defense can stay healthy and if the offense can do what they're going to do, I anticipate this team being top 5 defense. Now that health part is going to be the important part because it's a 17-game season and only one bye week, and the Pittsburgh Steelers have a couple of Thursdays and Wednesday games. Yeah. It'll and that last part, half of the season, is talk about a nightmare of a schedule. So it's going to be hard nosed. It's going to be tough. It's going to be
that's what they get paid the money for, right?
Yep. But this is going to be a season that's going to show their mental strength, in my opinion. They're going to be able to handle it. And if they do, and if they can, if this team can get into the playoffs with that kind of schedule and stuff, and I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves, they're going to be somebody to be feared.
Well deserved.
They're very much.
No, they definitely will. I think that, speaking of the schedule real quick, that 1 month division month, I know people are freaking out about it, but that's not till the end of the season. Who knows where the Bengals and the Ravens and Browns are going to be come then? It could honestly end up working in their favor, rather than the Steelers facing those teams earlier in the year where a lot of guys are healthy throughout their stretches of the season. They can end up facing some of those banged up teams. They'll probably end up being banged up. Everybody is, for the most part. Yeah. So even though it's a month, and I know that you go to the Bengals and the Browns and the Ravens and back to the Browns or Bengals, however it is, it could end up working in their favor this year. They usually win more division games than not each season. They usually have a winning record in their division. So I don't think people should be freaking out too much about it. You got to let it play out. Teams get banged up. Teams aren't as good as people think. So we'll see, but it could end up working out in their favor versus the popular mindset of, it's so hard, blah, 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 blah. Let it play out. Let it play out.
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. Well, guys, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Nathan, before we let everybody go, let everybody know where they can find you, my man.
You guys can follow me at In Hindsight. Haven't posted too much Steeler content lately just because it's been pretty dry. But if you guys go on my channel, I have some other content on there. With another buddy of mine as well. We talk about some other things outside of even just the NFL and everything. We're actually going to start uploading some college football gameplay, and we're going to be putting our own thoughts up about there, breaking down each division in the NFL. So it's not just strictly Steelers stuff. So if you're kind of into a variety of sports things, my channel will usually find things like that. So your guys' support always means everything. And thank you guys for always supporting Daniel and what we do.
Yes, 100%. Thank you, guys. We appreciate you guys. I'll be back on Monday night on the Steelers Hangover on the Steel Curtain Network YouTube side channel. Also, now that the season started, you can expect a lot more of my State of the Steelers content
Yes.
be coming out on
Yes.
the YouTube side as well.
Yes.
So make sure you tune in there, hit that like, hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell, do all those things you need to do. Until next time, guys, we're out of here. Peace.